Hello and welcome to day 12 of Freedom from Anxiety in Uncertain Times. I'm Jan Hart from Reconnect with Heart, and you're all very welcome today. So yesterday I was speaking about the bullying question that had come in, and one of the things that I mentioned was this picture that we've all seen of this old lady and young lady. And I suppose there's a lot of these floating around, different pictures, but the term that can often be used for them is the seeing eye pictures. And I really love that, because what we're doing here on these daily lives is we're trying to get new eyes for how the human system works. So I just really love that term, that's all. So this week, I suppose the theme that I've been speaking about is acceptance, and how acceptance is the path to a quiet mind and to that lovely feeling that we're listening for. I've been talking about accepting what is, and seeing the freedom that's available to us when we just relax into the present moment. And when we let go of all the struggling and the resistance, and just allow ourselves to rest in the present moment. So we'll be following on from that theme today. But from the messages that have been coming in, I've been speaking to people, I've been getting texts and WhatsApps and messages coming in various different forms, and I absolutely love hearing about what you're seeing. So please continue to share that. You can put it in the comments, or you can put it someplace else. And if you're here with me today, do say hello. Let me know who's here. I always like to know who's here with me. So I suppose acceptance isn't something that we do. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for saying hi. Acceptance is a byproduct of understanding, I suppose. So you can't make yourself accept something. And if you're trying to make yourself accept something, then you're already in resistance. And I hope you can feel that. So it's a byproduct of understanding what, I suppose? Understanding that you are whole and complete and lovable and enough already. There's nothing for you to do. And when you understand that that's the truth of who you are, then the acceptance is just a byproduct, and it happens all on its own. And as I was saying yesterday, what happens when we fall into acceptance is there's a clearing of all the old thinking, and we don't do that clearing. So one of the key messages in what I'm sharing here is that there's always less to do than you think. The understanding creates the shifts and the change. Insights are the nature of change. Not pushing and trying to get yourself to do something or make yourself do something. So we're not damaged. We can't be damaged by any circumstance, and I suppose that was the message yesterday. Nothing that has happened to us in our past, or nothing that's happening now, or nothing that can happen in our lives in the future can really have any impact on the fact that you are whole and complete and enough, because this is your natural state. And it's this natural state that I'm going to keep pointing towards of these conversations around these lives. So I hope you're starting to see now that as we continue to deconstruct our old conditioning, because that's what we're doing, and we're moving towards restoring ourselves to our true nature. So one of the things I thought might be helpful to talk about today is, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was somebody who was captured during World War II, and he was a Jewish man, and he ended up in Auschwitz, in the camps there. And while he saw an awful lot of the people around him floundering and falling, and just not being able to cope, I suppose, he himself handled it differently, and he wrote a book called A Man's Search for Meaning. And it's a beautiful book. If you haven't read it, then I would encourage you to go and read it. Because the theme in this book Victor talks about how the captors could do what they wanted with his body, but they couldn't touch his mind. And this is true for all of us. He recognized that he still had his essential nature and that it was at his disposal and that he could tap into it. And that's what he did. I'm getting shivers now even just talking about it. And with this understanding, he was able to love his captors, and he was able to meet them with love and understanding, because that's where he was coming from. He saw that at his essential nature, that's what he was pure love. And he also saw this in his captors. So he wasn't looking at the humanness of them, and he wasn't looking at their behaviours. He was meeting them in that place before thought, that place of pure consciousness, that place of pure love. And Viktor Frankl also recognized that he had this gift of fantasy that I spoke about a few days ago, and he used this gift of fantasy to help himself. And every day he took himself back through all of his wonderful memories of his life, his family, his career, and everything that had been beautiful in his life before he was captured. And he also used it to play out future fantasies, but they weren't fearful future fantasies. He created beautiful fantasies in his own mind about the time when he would reconnect and reacquaint himself with his wife and his children and his family. And he kept himself in this beautiful space by using the gift of fantasy. And during this time, he got very little to eat. He was beaten very badly. There was all sorts of mind games being played. We've all heard the horror stories of what happened in the concentration camps. But he tapped into his true essential nature because he recognized that it was still there. And he leveraged that to get him through that situation. And he came out whole and complete and in that place of love. And he did get to go back and meet his family. But he also told of all the sad stories of all people that weren't able to cope, that didn't know that they had this essential nature. And because they didn't know it, they couldn't recognize it, and they couldn't tap into it and use it for them. And all those other people, unfortunately, fell into the innocent misunderstanding that we've all fallen into and used the gift of fantasy to scare themselves. They bought into what was happening around them. They thought that the circumstances around them dictated how they felt inside and what their internal experience was. But Victor didn't. So if you've never read that book, I would encourage you to read it, because it's a powerful example of how what's going on the outside doesn't determine the experience that we have inside. So, the other message I think that's really strong out of Victor's book is that nobody can take away your dignity. Nobody can take away your loving nature. Nobody can take away those deeper feelings of kindness, compassion, and understanding. And because Victor was able to meet his captors from that beautiful place and from that beautiful feeling, he was able to navigate that space and come out the other side. So it's just a beautiful story. So you will start, as you stay around this conversation and stuff starts to seep in a little bit, you'll start to see your own conditioning. You see it around your belief systems, you see it around your value systems, and just how you show up generally and the place that you come from. And what happens is that your mind starts to loosen up a little bit, and some of the conditioning starts to fall away. And again, it's just a beautiful experience, because you're not doing it. There's nothing for you to do to make it fall away. As I keep saying, it's the byproduct of understanding. And the mind that was so full of conditioning becomes free again. And when that happens, more of our essential nature comes forward and comes out front, and we can see it. And you start having the beautiful experience and the beautiful feeling of inner freedom. So that's the Viktor Frankl story. Now, the other thing I want to say is that as we travel together here, there can be resistance, and that's normal and okay too. And from what I've seen, the resistance can come in two different forms. Um, right, it can come in the form of internal turmoil and internal resistance, but it can also come in the form of external resistance, as in people around you start to notice that something is shifting and changing within you. And sometimes when people see that change in you, it can leave them feeling insecure and a little bit scared because they're watching you trying something new on for size, spreading your wings and starting to fly. And if they don't understand what's happening and what's going on, that can cause a reaction. So the best way to meet that reaction in another person is with love and understanding, and maybe tell them what's going on for you and share a little if you can. Okay, so I suppose that brings me on to another thing I wanted to talk about today, which is the learning curve. And just like when we're learning anything new, there's always going to be a learning curve, and it's good to recognize this and to see and to accept that there will be roadblocks and there will be speed bumps along the way as you find your feet. And sometimes it can feel as if you're going backwards instead of forwards, and if we don't expect that, we can get thrown by it, and we can be left feeling discouraged and disappointed, and that's not going to help us. So what's more helpful is just to expect that these things will happen, because they do. And I'm going to share a personal example with you on this, just because it comes to mind for me. And when I first came across this, 4 years ago now, my expectation was that I wouldn't have any more bad thinking, wouldn't have any experiences in my life that I didn't want, and that I'd become a nicer person, or I'd show up as a nicer person. And this was just the thinking that I had and the expectations that I had. And what happened for me was that I actually turned into a bit of a bitch for a while instead of being a nicer person. And I got very confused by it because I didn't understand what was happening, and I didn't recognize what was going on as part of the learning curve. So I just want to kind of bring that out into the open. Now, as I share this experience with you, I'm not condoning my behaviour. It's not okay to be hurting other people around us. Now, I never intend to set out to hurt anybody, but as a human being, sometimes I do. And when I do, then there's something to do about it, but we won't go there today. So before I stumbled across this conversation and this understanding, I was very self-conscious, and I was very caught up in my head about managing myself, and especially around other people and how I showed up around other people. And now, I suppose the after is my tendency is more to align myself with that innate well-being, my essential nature, and leaning more into love, understanding, and kindness and compassion. So if that was my intention, then what was showing up as me being a bit bitchy sometimes, more than a bit sometimes, it just caused a little confusion for me. So as I got more free and open in the way that I just described to you a few minutes ago, I realized that I didn't have to be perfect. And I hope that you're starting to see, as we go through this and as we start to deconstruct the conditioning, that you will go to a better place. But anyway, back to the story. So I was working very hard on a project, and I guess I hit the messy part of learning without actually realizing it at the time. And when we see that there's a learning curve and that we're on a learning journey and that learning is messy, then we can expect things, because what that means on this learning curve is that we're not repressing our feelings and that we're showing up as real and authentic in any moment. So as I was working on this big project with one of my colleagues, we were facing a lot of challenges. And it wasn't going smoothly, and it wasn't going at the pace, and it wasn't coming to pass, and we were having some difficulty bringing it over the line, I suppose, be the easiest way to say it. And on one of these days where I was feeling particularly challenged, I don't know exactly what was said, but I got caught up in my thinking and I forgot about my essential nature for a little while. And in that moment I became really frustrated and I became really angry, and I said a lot of things. And afterwards, when it was over, I felt depleted, exhausted. I also felt horrible about myself. I was embarrassed. I felt shame. I just wanted to crawl into a hole, really, because I couldn't believe that I had showed up in that way, particularly given that I was on this particular journey and learning these lessons and trying to lean into all these beautiful, deeper feelings. So after a little while, when my mind settled, what I realized, and it's interesting, what I realized was that in that moment, I was actually not repressing my feelings like I normally did, and I wasn't managing myself in the way that I normally did, because I had moved along that learning curve a little bit, and because I wasn't repressing what was coming up for me, and because I was more open to what would come up, I suppose, I showed up as real and authentic in that moment. It wasn't nice and it wasn't pretty, and as I say, I'm not condoning it, I'm not proud of it, I don't want to show up that way again, but I saw that it was part of the learning curve. Not in the moment, but a little bit later when I settled down, and I saw that it was I was able to see it differently, and it was like when it was happening and immediately afterwards I was seeing the old lady who was struggling and, you know, was maybe a bit confused and needed help. But when I settled down later, I was able to see the young, vibrant, alive lady, and I was able to see that this was part of the learning curve. And it was at that point that I was able to show up for myself with a bit more love and understanding and compassion. Now, as I say, not condoning it, don't ever want that to happen again. It may not, I don't want it to, that would never be my intention. So, you know, I was able to go back to this person and apologise, and we were able to work through it, thankfully, because this is somebody I really value. And but I was able to see it with new eyes. So again, it's just coming back to getting new eyes. So that was one part of what I saw when I saw the young girl and the aliveness and the vibrancy, and I saw what was happening, and I saw how it was connected to my true nature. And in that moment, I just caught up in my thinking as a human being. It doesn't make it okay that I treated somebody else like that, but as I said, I apologised. But the other thing that I learnt from that episode, as I call it, was that by the way I had been showing up before, I was protecting myself, certainly. So it was coming from, you know, a positive place within me. But I was also preventing real intimacy in relationships, because I wasn't allowing myself to be real and true and authentic. I've also learned that when I'm in those moments now, that I see them faster. And when I start to get caught up, I recognize it sooner, because I have better eyes for it. And when we have better eyes, you know, we get wise to it quicker. And now when I find myself in that kind of a space, or that kind of a feeling, or that caught up in a thought storm, I remember to not put my big foot in it, and to not open my big mouth, and to just wait a minute, or a few minutes, or a day or whatever I need to wait until that thinking and that moment and that frenzy passes, and then I know what to do, because then I'll be coming back to my default, and then I'll be coming from a place of love and understanding, and I'll be able to do something better with it from that place. And it's a bit like, I know lots of us, when we get emails in work and you see something and you have a reaction to it and you think somebody is wrong and you need to write back to them and you like start typing like mad and put all this email together and then you look at it and it's full of emotion and, and I know I've learned over the years not to send it. It may occur to me in the moment, and it may be wisdom playing out in the moment to get it out of my head and down on paper, because that's what's occurring to me. But it also occurs to me not to send it, and to let it sit there and to go sleep on it and come back with fresh new eyes, and maybe I'll see something different. So on the inside, before I came to this understanding, I was tight, I was rigid, I was contracted, and I was protecting myself. Now I'm more open, I suppose, to what will come through. And I also see that it wasn't helpful in those relationships to show up that way because I wasn't being real. And you know what? We all have BS meters, and we can all read other people's BS meters. And if I'm not showing up as real and authentic, people are going to get a sense of that, because they do. So as you let go, so just mistakes are part of the learning curve. Mistakes are part of being human, and learning can be messy. So just keep that in mind if this doesn't go exactly the way that you'd like it to go. And as we move through the learning curve and you let go of your conditioning, you can be gentle with yourself, because as we understand what's happening, we know that it's all okay, and we know that when our thinking settles, we'll come back to our default. It's so liberating to take your hands off the controls. That you don't have to be managing everything. You can take your brave face off. You can take all the efforting away, and you can just show up in a natural, more organic way in any moment, and just let life live through you. So loving intelligence is our true nature. And the opportunity for you today is to start to get eyes for where your own loving intelligence is showing up in your life, moment to moment. Yesterday we spoke about the lady that had asked the question, how her own wisdom was leading her, even though she may not see that. And it's leading all of us. So see what comes up for you when you look in this direction. So I'm going to invite you to think of these daily lives as a little grow box. And as the old conditioning starts to loosen up a little bit and a little bit more space comes into your being, little green shoots are going to start arriving. New thoughts, little insights, big insights, but they're all going to be green shoots. And I want you to treat those green shoots with love and nurture and care, and just watch them grow. Don't try and make them do anything. Don't try and make them go straight up or go to the right or go to the left or be curly or anything else. Just let them be there. Give them your love and attention. That's all they need. And watch them grow and blossom in your life. So that's it for today, folks. Tomorrow we have a new guest. We have another lovely lady. Laura White is going to be with us. So I look forward to speaking to Laura. And again, if anybody has any feedback or comments or questions, I would love to hear them. So be sure to send them on. So that's it for today. Love to all, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care and have a great day.